Excuse me, I'd like to check in, please.
The man behind the front desk looked her up and down, slowly. Then he laughed, right in her face.
Check in?
Craig Dunmore's voice dripped with disgust.
You smell like you slept on a bus. Get away from my counter. You're making the guests uncomfortable.
He leaned in, eyes cold.
You people belong in the gutter, not in my lobby. Get your filthy black ass out of here before I call the cops and have you dragged out like the trash you are.
A woman nearby snorted into her champagne glass. A teenager aimed his phone, grinning, already live streaming. The entire lobby watched. Nobody spoke up. Just silence and smirks. And she stood there, alone against all of them. But not one soul in that lobby could have imagined what was coming. Because in just a few minutes, every single person who laughed would be begging for forgiveness. To understand what happened that day at the Belmont Grand, you need to know who Brenda Williams really is. That morning started like any other Tuesday, 6 a.m. The sun hadn't fully risen over Alexandria, Virginia. The neighborhood was quiet. Old oak trees lining the streets, dew sitting on manicured lawns. The kind of silence that only money can buy. Inside a red brick colonial home at the end of a cul-de-sac, Brenda Williams sat at her desk in a second-floor office. The room smelled like fresh coffee and old leather. Behind her, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves held everything from Harvard Business Review volumes to first-edition James Baldwin novels. 2 degrees hung on the wall, one from Howard University, one from Wharton. Next to them, a framed photograph showed Brenda shaking hands with a former Secretary of Commerce at a White House reception. This woman was not who Craig Dunmore thought she was, not even close. Brenda was the founder and CEO of Prestige Capital Holdings, a private equity firm specializing in luxury hospitality acquisitions. Over the past decade, she had quietly built an empire, 14 boutique hotels across the East Coast, 3 luxury resorts, a portfolio worth north of $400 million. 6 weeks ago, she had completed her biggest acquisition yet, the Belmont Grand, a 200-room historic luxury hotel in the heart of Richmond, Virginia. The deal closed privately. No press release, no announcement. The staff had no idea the ownership had changed hands. And that was exactly how Brenda wanted it. See, Brenda had a rule, a non-negotiable one. Before she ever introduced herself to the staff of a newly acquired property, she would visit as a regular guest. No entourage, no designer labels, no name dropping. She wanted to walk in the way any ordinary person would walk in and see how the hotel really operated when nobody was performing for the boss. She called it her truth test. So that morning, she packed a modest rolling suitcase. She put on a pair of comfortable jeans, a plain gray sweater, and flat shoes. No jewelry except her wedding band. No makeup. She tied her hair back simply. She looked like a woman traveling alone on a budget. That was the point. Her husband Derek leaned against the bedroom door frame as she zipped her bag. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with kind eyes. A successful architect who had designed half the modern office buildings in Northern Virginia. "You sure you don't want me to come?" he asked. Brenda shook her head. "If I show up with you, they'll treat me differently. I need to see the real thing." Derek crossed his arms and smiled. "And if they treat you badly?" She looked at him over her shoulder. "Then I'll know exactly who needs to go." He kissed her forehead. "Give 'em hell, baby." She didn't smile. She just picked up her bag and walked out the door. The drive from Alexandria to Richmond took about 2 hours. Brenda listened to a jazz playlist the whole way. Miles Davis, Coltrane, the kind of music that keeps your mind sharp and your blood cool. She would need both. By 11 a.m., she pulled into the circular driveway of the Belmont Grand. And the moment she stepped out of her modest sedan, she could already feel it. The Belmont Grand was a century-old landmark. Tall white columns framed the entrance, like a southern plantation reimagined as a palace. Through the glass doors, the lobby glowed. polished marble floors reflecting crystal chandeliers, oil paintings in gilded frames, the faint sound of a grand piano drifting from the lounge. The air smelled like fresh lilies and old money. It was beautiful. It was elegant. And it was hers. A young black man in a bellhop uniform noticed her approaching. His name tag read Terrence. He stepped forward with a genuine smile, reaching for his suitcase. "Welcome to the Belmont Grand, ma'am. Can I help you with your—" "Leave it." The voice came from behind the front desk, sharp, dismissive, like a whip crack across the quiet lobby. Craig Dunmore stood there, arms folded, watching Brenda the way a bouncer watches someone try to sneak past the velvet rope. Terrence froze. His hand dropped. His eyes went to the floor. He stepped back without a word, like he'd been trained to disappear. And just like that, Brenda knew. She didn't need an inspection report. She didn't need a staff review. In that one moment, the way Craig spoke, the way Terrence flinched, she knew exactly what kind of place this was. But she didn't say a word, not yet. She walked toward the front desk, head high, step steady. And the truth test had already begun. Brenda reached the front desk and set her hands on the cool marble counter. The stone was polished so clean she could see her own reflection in it. Behind the desk, a woman in her late 30s with blonde hair pinned tight looked up from a computer screen. Her name tag read Heather Nolan, front desk manager. Heather's smile appeared and disappeared in the same breath. It was the kind of smile you give someone you've already decided doesn't belong. "Can I help you?" she asked. But her tone said something else entirely. Her tone said, "What are you doing here?" "Yes," Brenda said calmly. "I have a reservation under Brenda Williams. I'd like to check in." Heather's fingers moved across the keyboard, slowly, too slowly. She squinted at the screen like she was reading a foreign language. "Williams, you said?" "Yes, Williams. Heather tilted her head. "I'm not finding anything under that name." "I confirmed the booking yesterday," Brenda said. Her voice was even, patient, like she'd had this conversation before. Not at this hotel, but in 100 other places where her presence was treated as a mistake. Heather typed again. Then she sighed. "Could you spell your first name for me?" "Brenda, Brenda. "And you're sure it was this hotel?" Brenda didn't blink. "I'm sure." From behind, Craig Dunmore appeared like a shadow. He had been watching the entire time, leaning against the concierge wall with his arms crossed, studying Brenda the way a hawk studies something small on the ground. Now he stepped forward, positioning himself right beside Heather, his presence turning the front desk into a wall. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. But he wasn't asking Brenda. He was asking Heather, as if Brenda wasn't a person, just a problem to be managed. "She says she has a reservation," Heather replied. "I can't seem to locate it." Craig looked at Brenda. His eyes traveled from her shoes, to her jeans, to her gray sweater. He lingered on her hair, on her skin. He didn't even try to hide it. "What's the purpose of your visit?" he asked. Brenda met his gaze. "I'm a guest. I'd like to check in." "Right." Craig let the word hang in the air. "Do you have a credit card on file?" "Of course." Brenda pulled a card from her wallet and placed it on the counter. Craig picked it up. He held it between two fingers, like it was something he'd found on the floor of a gas station bathroom. He turned it over. He held it up to the light. He actually held a credit card up to the light, in the middle of a hotel lobby, like he was checking for a counterfeit bill. Then he set it down and slid it back toward her. "I'm going to need a second form of identification," he said. "You have my driver's license and my credit card," Brenda replied. "That's standard." Not here it isn't, Craig's voice hardened. We have a new security policy. Guests without prior booking history are required to provide a $2,000 cash deposit at check-in. $2,000. Cash. Brenda let those words settle in the air between them. She glanced to her right. A white couple in their 50s had just approached the other end of the front desk. A second clerk greeted them warmly. Big smile, direct eye contact, a cheerful, "Welcome back, Mr. and Mrs. Calloway." Within 30 seconds, they had room keys in hand. No second ID, no cash deposit, no interrogation. Brenda turned back to Craig. "Does that policy apply to everyone?" she asked quietly. Craig didn't flinch. "It applies when I say it applies." The lobby was watching now. Not loudly, not obviously, but Brenda could feel it. The sidelong glances, the conversations pausing mid-sentence, the slight turn of heads. A woman on a lobby sofa lowered her magazine just enough to peer over the top. A businessman near the elevator pretended to check his phone while his eyes stayed locked on the front desk. And over by the luggage cart, Terrence stood frozen. His hands gripped the brass handle so tight his knuckles had gone pale. His jaw was clenched. His eyes moved between Craig and Brenda like he was watching something he had seen too many times before and hated every single time. Brenda took a slow breath. The air smelled like lilies and furniture polish and something else she couldn't name. Contempt, maybe. "I'd like to speak with a manager," she said. Craig spread his arms wide, palms up, like a king presenting his throne room. The gesture was theatrical, mocking. "You're looking at him, sweetheart." Sweetheart. He said it the way you'd say cockroach, smooth on the surface, venom underneath. Brenda didn't react, not visibly, but something shifted behind her eyes. A door closing, a decision being made. "I'd like your full name and employee ID number, please," she said. Craig laughed. Not a chuckle. A full, open-mouthed laugh. He looked at Heather. Heather looked back. They shared the laugh like an inside joke at someone else's expense. "My name is Craig Dunmore, General Manager. 8 years at this property." He tapped his name tag with 2 fingers. "And you don't need my employee ID. What you need is to find a hotel more suited to your situation." He let the pause do the work. The word situation carried everything he wouldn't say out loud, but everyone heard it. Brenda reached into her jacket pocket, slowly, deliberately. She pulled out her phone and opened the voice recorder. She tapped the red button. A small red dot pulsed on the screen. She set the phone on the counter, screen facing up. "Could you repeat that, please?" she said. Craig stared at the phone. His smile didn't disappear, but it tightened, like a mask adjusting itself. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time to vacate the premises," he said. His voice was different now, louder, more official, the voice of a man who wanted witnesses to hear his version. "You do not have a valid reservation. You have refused to comply with our security protocol. If you do not leave voluntarily, I will contact the authorities." "I have a confirmed reservation," Brenda said. Same calm, same steady voice. "I have a valid ID and a valid credit card. I'm not leaving." Craig's jaw tightened. A vein pulsed at his temple. He straightened his tie, a nervous habit disguised as authority. "Fine," he said. "Have it your way." He turned to Heather and spoke just loud enough for the lobby to hear. "Call the police. Tell them we have a woman refusing to leave the property. Possible trespasser. Potentially aggressive." Potentially aggressive. Brenda hadn't raised a finger, hadn't raised her voice, hadn't moved from the spot where she stood, and now she was potentially aggressive. Heather picked up the desk phone without hesitation, like she'd done this before, like there was a script for this exact moment, and she knew her lines by heart. Yes, hello. This is the Belmont Grand Hotel on East Gray Street. We have an individual refusing to leave the premises. She's become confrontational with staff, and we're concerned for guest safety. Every word was a lie. Every single one. And Heather delivered them with the calm, polished tone of a woman reporting the weather. Brenda heard the lie. She felt it land in her chest like a stone dropped into still water. But she didn't move. She didn't argue. She stood perfectly still, her phone recording on the counter, her eyes fixed on Craig Dunmore's face. And behind those calm eyes, behind that steady breath, a storm was building. Not the kind that breaks things, the kind that cleans house. Terrence, still gripping the luggage cart near the elevator, lowered his head. His lips moved. No sound came out. But if you read them carefully, you could see what he was saying. Not again. It took the police exactly 7 minutes to arrive. 7 minutes that felt like 7 hours. During those 7 minutes, Brenda didn't move. She stood at the front desk with her hands flat on the marble counter, her phone still recording, her breathing steady. She looked like a woman waiting for a bus. But the lobby around her had transformed into something else entirely. Craig paced behind the front desk like a general preparing for battle. He straightened papers that didn't need straightening. He adjusted his cufflinks. He picked up the desk phone, put it down, picked it up again. Every movement was designed to project control. But underneath, there was something else. Excitement. The man was enjoying this. He whispered something to Heather that made her nod quickly and pick up a second phone, an internal line this time. Within minutes, 2 hotel security guards appeared from a side corridor. Both were large men in dark suits with earpieces. They positioned themselves near the front entrance, feet shoulder-width apart, arms crossed over their broad chests. They didn't speak to Brenda. They didn't even look at her. They just stood there, a wall of muscle between her and the exit. Not to keep her in, to let her know she was surrounded. Craig wasn't done. He walked out from behind the desk and approached a group of guests sitting in the lounge area. He leaned down, speaking in a low, apologetic tone, the concerned manager assuring his valued clientele. "I'm terribly sorry for the disturbance, folks. We're handling the situation. The police are on their way. Please don't worry. Your safety is our top priority." Your safety. As if Brenda were a bomb. As if she were a threat that needed to be contained. The guests nodded. A few glanced toward Brenda with narrowed eyes. A woman in a cream-colored dress pulled her designer handbag closer to her body. A man in a navy blazer pulled out his phone and started recording. Not Craig, not the security guards, but Brenda. Just Brenda. Standing still, doing nothing. Another woman on the lobby sofa leaned toward her husband and whispered, "See, I told you, they always cause a scene." She didn't whisper quietly enough. The words traveled across the marble floor and landed at Brenda's feet like something thrown. Brenda heard it. She absorbed it the way the ocean absorbs a stone, silently, completely, without a ripple on the surface. But her fingers pressed a little harder into the marble, just slightly, just enough for her own body to know what her face would never show. Then the sirens came. Not loud at first, just a faint wail in the distance, threading through the hum of downtown Richmond traffic. Then louder, then closer, until red and blue lights splashed across the lobby's floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the marble floor in alternating streaks of color. The chandelier crystals caught the flashes and scattered them across the ceiling like broken stars. 2 squad cars pulled up to the hotel entrance. Doors opened. Boots hit pavement. The lobby's revolving door spun, and with it came the smell of exhaust and the crackle of police radios. Officer Ray Garrett walked in first. He was a big man, 6'2", broad chest, buzz cut, mirrored sunglasses pushed up on his forehead. His hand rested on his belt, fingers inches from his holster. You couldn't tell if it was habit or intention. His boots squeaked against the marble as he scanned the room with the slow, sweeping look of a man deciding who was guilty before anyone spoke. Behind him, Officer Diane Soto followed. She was smaller, calmer, her dark eyes taking in the room with a measured look, the kind of look that gathers facts before forming opinions. She carried a notepad and a pen. Garrett carried authority. Craig intercepted them before they reached the desk. He moved fast, too fast, like a man who'd been rehearsing this moment in his head for the past 7 minutes. "Officers, thank you for coming so quickly," he said, adjusting his tie. His voice shifted into something smooth, concerned, professional. The voice of a man who manages 5-star hotels and handles situations with discretion. "We have an individual who entered the property without a valid reservation. She's been verbally confrontational with my staff. She refused to provide adequate identification and declined to leave when asked repeatedly. Honestly, I'm concerned she may have presented a fraudulent credit card." Fraudulent. He said that word clearly, loudly, making sure the officers heard it, making sure the lobby heard it, planting a seed that he knew would grow exactly the way he wanted. Heather stepped forward, right on cue, like a rehearsed witness taking the stand. She was raising her voice at Mr. Dunmore, she said, clutching a clipboard against her chest like a shield. She became aggressive when we asked her to follow standard security procedures. We felt unsafe. Unsafe. Aggressive. Fraudulent. 3 words. 3 lies. Delivered with the calm, practiced precision of people who knew exactly what those words meant when applied to a black woman standing alone in a white space. Garrett turned toward Brenda. He walked slowly, deliberately. Each boot step echoed on the marble like a countdown. The distance between them shrank. 20 feet, 15, 10. And with each step, the air in the lobby grew thinner. "Ma'am," he said, "step away from the counter, please." "I haven't done anything wrong," Brenda replied. Her voice was steady, controlled. "I have a confirmed reservation. I've presented valid identification and a valid credit card. I've been standing here calmly the entire time." "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the counter." Louder this time, not a request anymore, a command wrapped in politeness like a fist inside a glove. Brenda lifted her hands from the marble and held them open at her sides, palms out, fingers spread. The universal gesture of someone who is not a threat and wants you to know it. "I'm cooperating," she said, "but I'd like to know why I'm being treated like a criminal for trying to check into a hotel." Garrett didn't answer the question. Instead, his eyes dropped to her suitcase, the modest black rolling bag sitting on the floor beside her. "Is that your bag?" "Yes, I'm going to need to take a look inside." "No," Brenda said, calm, clear, final. "I do not consent to a search. I've committed no crime." The word "no" hit Garrett like a slap across the face. His jaw tightened. His hand shifted on his belt, closer to the holster this time, and everyone in the lobby saw it. Behind him, Soto stepped forward slightly, her pen hovering over her notepad, her brow creased. "Ray," Soto said quietly, "maybe we should just verify the reservation with the front desk and de-escalate." "I've got this, Diane." Garrett didn't turn around, didn't take his eyes off Brenda. His voice was flat, hard, the voice of a man who had already made up his mind. Soto pressed her lips together, exhaled through her nose, and stepped back. But she kept writing. Craig seized the moment. He moved closer to Garrett, leaning in, lowering his voice into a concerned whisper, but not low enough, never low enough. "Officer, between you and me, we see this from time to time. People come in off the street, try to scam a free room, cause a big disturbance, then play the victim when we push back. I've been in this business 8 years. I know the type. The type. 2 words that carried the weight of centuries. Craig didn't say what type. He didn't have to. The word hung in the air like smoke. Invisible, toxic, and impossible to ignore. Garrett nodded slowly. Whatever Soto had suggested was gone now, erased. Craig's words had landed exactly where they were meant to land. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to put your hands where I can see them," Garrett said. "My hands are visible," Brenda replied. And they were, still open, still at her sides, still showing nothing but empty palms and steady fingers. "Turn around, please." "Am I being detained?" "Turn around." The lobby had gone completely silent. The piano music from the lounge had stopped. The pianist had turned on his bench to watch, his hands frozen above the keys. The man in the navy blazer held his phone higher, still filming. The woman on the sofa gripped her husband's arm with white knuckles. A child near the elevator tugged his mother's sleeve and whispered, "Mommy, what's happening?" She shushed him without answering. And Terrence. Terrence stood near the luggage cart, his back pressed flat against the wall, his eyes wide, his chest barely moving. Like if he breathed too loudly, he'd be next. His fingers trembled at his sides. His lips were pressed together so tight they'd gone pale. Brenda turned around, slowly, with the kind of dignity that cannot be handcuffed, cannot be arrested, cannot be taken away no matter what happens next. She placed her hands on the marble counter. The stone was cold under her palms. Garrett stepped behind her. Close. Too close. She could smell his aftershave. Sharp, chemical, cheap. She could hear his breathing. She could hear the leather of his belt creak as he reached back. He unclipped his handcuffs. The metal clinked. A small, precise sound that rang through the silent lobby like a gunshot. Every head turned. Every phone raised. Every breath held. "I want my attorney present," Brenda said. Her voice didn't waver. Not even slightly. Not even a fraction. "I am not resisting. I have committed no crime. And I want my attorney." Craig watched from behind the desk, arms folded, chin lifted, that faint smile still playing at the corner of his mouth. The smile of a man who believed, truly, deeply believed, that he had won. That the system worked exactly the way it was supposed to. That people like him always came out on top. Heather stood beside him, clipboard pressed to her chest, face carefully blank. The face of someone who had chosen her side long ago and never once looked back. And outside, through the glass doors, beyond the flashing police lights, another car pulled into the circular driveway. A black sedan. Polished. Silent. The kind of car that doesn't honk, doesn't rush, doesn't announce itself. Because it doesn't need to. The driver's door opened. A pair of heels clicked against the pavement. Sharp. Measured. Deliberate. Like a clock counting down. But nobody inside noticed. Not Craig, not Heather, not Garrett. Not a single person in that lobby had any idea that the next 60 seconds were about to turn their entire world upside down. The lobby doors swung open. Not fast, not slow, just deliberately. The way doors open when the person behind them has never once had to rush for anyone. Every head turned. Vanessa Cole stepped into the Belmont Grand like she owned the courtroom, and the building came with it. Tall, mid-40s, charcoal-tailored suit that fit like armor. Her heels struck the marble in a rhythm that silenced everything else. Click, click, click. She carried a leather briefcase in one hand. In the other, nothing. She didn't need anything else. Her eyes swept the room in 2 seconds. The security guards, the guests with phones raised. Terrence pressed against the wall, Heather clutching her clipboard, Craig behind the desk with his arms folded, and Brenda, hands on the counter. An officer behind her with handcuffs unclipped. Vanessa didn't slow down. She walked straight toward Garrett with the kind of stride that makes people step aside without being asked. And they did. "Remove your hands from my client, now." Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It filled the lobby the way thunder fills a valley, not because it's screaming, but because there's nowhere to hide from it. Garrett froze. His hand hovered near Brenda's wrist, handcuffs dangling from one finger. "And you are?" "Vanessa Cole, senior partner, Cole and Associates. I am Ms. Williams' attorney. If those handcuffs touch her skin, you will be hearing from me, your precinct commander, and the United States Department of Justice, in that order." She placed a business card on the counter beside Brenda's phone, which was still recording. Garrett looked at the card, looked at Vanessa, looked at Brenda. Then he stepped back. The handcuffs disappeared onto his belt with a quiet click. Vanessa turned to Craig. Until this moment, Craig Dunmore had been standing behind the front desk, with the posture of a man in complete control. Arms folded, jaw set, the faintest smirk still on his lips. He looked like a man watching the final act of a play he had written himself. "Mr. Dunmore," Vanessa said. She set her briefcase on the counter. The brass clasps snapped open, two sharp sounds that cracked through the silence like a judge's gavel. "Do you know who you just called the police on?" Craig's smirk held. "Barely. I know exactly who I called the police on. A woman who refused to leave my hotel." "Your hotel," Vanessa repeated the words slowly, letting them hang, letting them rot. She pulled out a folder and spread documents across the counter one by one, the way a dealer lays down a winning hand. Each page landed with a soft slap against the marble. "This is a certificate of acquisition dated 6 weeks ago. The Belmont Grand Hotel, purchased by Prestige Capital Holdings." She tapped the second page. "Notarized ownership transfer filed with the Commonwealth of Virginia." She tapped the third. "A letter from the board of directors confirming that the sole owner and CEO of Prestige Capital Holdings is..." She paused, looked at Craig, looked at Heather, looked at Garrett. Then she turned to the lobby. Every guest, every phone, every pair of wide eyes. "Brenda Williams, the woman you just tried to have arrested." The words landed like a bomb, with no sound. "My client is not a trespasser. She is not a scammer. She is not aggressive, fraudulent, or any other lie you fed these officers. She is your employer. She owns this building, this lobby, and every square inch of marble you're standing on." The lobby went still. Not quiet, still. The kind of silence that follows a detonation, after the blast, but before the debris hits the ground. Craig's face drained. All at once, like someone pulled a plug, and every drop of blood, confidence, and arrogance emptied out through his feet. His arms unfolded. His hands dropped to his sides. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. For the first time in 8 years behind that desk, Craig Dunmore had absolutely nothing to say. Heather's clipboard slipped from her fingers and clattered against the marble. The sound echoed like an exclamation point. Garrett took another step back. His hand came off his belt entirely. Officer Soto, standing behind him, closed her notepad slowly. She didn't look surprised. She looked like a woman whose instincts had just been confirmed. And Brenda, still standing at the counter, still calm, slowly turned around. She looked at Craig, not with anger, not with triumph, with something far worse. Certainty. "I came here to see how my staff treats people," she said. Quiet, controlled, Every word is placed like a scalpel. Now I know. She straightened her sweater, looked Craig dead in the eye. You're done. Behind her, near the elevator, Terrence Adams exhaled for the first time in 20 minutes. His hands were unclenched, his shoulders dropped. And across his face, just barely, just enough, the smallest smile he'd allowed himself in 2 years. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. The kind of silence where you can hear chandelier crystals swaying, the hum of air conditioning, the faint tick of the grandfather clock near the concierge desk. Then, Craig Dunmore did what cowards always do. He started talking. Ms. Williams, Brenda, this is all a huge misunderstanding. His voice cracked in the first syllable. The authority, the smugness, the 8 years of unchecked power. Gone. I was just following protocol. I had no idea. If you had known, you would have treated me like a human being? Brenda tilted her head. That's the problem, Mr. Dunmore. You should have treated me like a human being, regardless. Vanessa didn't let him respond. Mr. Dunmore, effective immediately, your employment at the Belmont Grand is terminated. You will be escorted off the premises. You will not return to this property. You will not contact any staff member. Craig's eyes darted around the lobby, searching for an ally, a sympathetic face. He found nothing. The same guests who had smirked at Brenda minutes ago were now staring at their shoes. He turned to the security guards, the same men he had summoned to intimidate Brenda. One of them stepped forward and extended a hand toward the door. Sir, this way, please. Craig unclipped his name tag with shaking fingers, set it on the counter. Then he walked toward the door, flanked by 2 guards, his shoes clicking against the marble he had ruled for 8 years. He didn't look back. Heather was next. She'd been frozen since her clipboard hit the floor. Mr. Dunmore told me to— Ms. Nolan, Vanessa said, you personally called the police and reported my client was confrontational and aggressive. Her recording confirms she never raised her voice. You fabricated a police report. You are suspended immediately, pending investigation. Heather grabbed her purse with trembling hands and disappeared through the staff corridor. The door clicked shut behind her. Quiet. Final. Brenda turned to Officer Garrett. He had retreated several steps from the counter. The broad chest had deflated. The authoritative stance was gone. He looked like a man trying to become invisible in a room full of mirrors. Officer Garrett, Brenda said, you arrived at this hotel, heard one side of the story, and almost arrested an innocent woman without verifying a single fact. You ignored your partner's suggestion to de-escalate. You demanded to search my belongings without probable cause. She paused. I have the entire interaction recorded. My attorney will file a formal complaint with the Richmond Police Department before the end of business today. Garrett swallowed hard. He glanced at Soto. She didn't return the look, just kept writing in her notepad, pen moving steadily across the page. Ma'am, we're done here, officer, Vanessa said. Her briefcase clasps snapped shut, the sound of a cell door closing. Garrett walked out. Soto followed, but stopped at the door. She turned back to Brenda. I'm sorry this happened to you, ma'am. Brenda looked at her for a long moment, then nodded, once. She didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't. The revolving door spun, the officers were gone, the lobby exhaled. Then a voice came from near the elevator, small, shaking. Ms. Williams? Terrence Adams stood there, hands clasped, eyes red, jaw tight. He looked like a man who had been holding his breath for 2 years. He's done this before, Terrence said, his voice cracked. to guests, to staff, to anyone who looked like us. I kept a list. Every incident, every date, every name, all in my phone. I was too scared to say anything because I knew he'd fire me and make sure I never worked in this city again. He held out his phone with trembling hands. Brenda looked at the phone, looked at Terrence, then placed her hand gently over his. "You're not scared anymore," she said. "Give your statement to my attorney, every single word." Vanessa took out a fresh legal pad, and Terrence Adams, the quiet bellhop who had flinched at Craig's voice, who had pressed himself against walls, who had whispered, "Not again," when nobody was listening, finally started talking. The story didn't end when Craig Dunmore walked out of that lobby. That was just the beginning. Within 24 hours, Brenda ordered a full internal investigation of the Belmont Grand's operations under Craig's management. She brought in an independent firm, no connections to the hotel, no loyalty to the old regime. Their job was simple: turn over every stone and report what crawled out. What they found was worse than anyone expected. 8 years. 8 years of systematic discrimination buried under five-star smiles and polished marble. The investigators uncovered a pattern so deep it had become part of the hotel's DNA. Guest complaint records showed that Black and Latino guests were routinely assigned smaller rooms on lower floors, regardless of what they had booked. When they complained, front desk staff were trained to offer scripted apologies and minor discounts, rather than actual room changes. Craig had written the scripts himself. Minority guests were flagged in the reservation system with a discrete code, a small red dot next to their names. The staff called it the marker. It meant extra scrutiny at check-in, additional ID requests, deposit requirements that white guests never faced. The same fake policy Craig had tried to enforce on Brenda had been used dozens of times before. Employment records were even uglier. In 8 years, not a single Black or Latino employee had been promoted to a supervisory position. Not one. Qualified candidates were passed over again and again, their performance reviews mysteriously downgraded, just enough to justify the decision. Meanwhile, underperforming white staff members climbed the ladder with glowing evaluations Craig had personally written. 3 former housekeepers came forward with statements describing verbal abuse, being called lazy, dirty, and worse behind closed doors. 2 former front desk clerks, both Black women, described being written up for attitude problems after refusing Craig's advances. They had quit rather than fight. Craig had counted on that. And then there was Terrence's list. 43 incidents over 2 years. Dates, names, descriptions, all documented in the Notes app on his phone. Guests turned away, staff humiliated, complaints buried. 43 times Terrence had watched it happen, too afraid to speak, too decent to forget. He had carried that list like a weight around his neck, waiting for a moment he wasn't sure would ever come. It came. But the investigation was only half the storm. The other half was already raging online. Remember the man in the navy blazer, the one who had been filming in the lobby? His name was Roland Schaefer. He wasn't just a guest. He was a regional hospitality reporter for the Richmond Dispatch, staying at the hotel to review it for an upcoming feature. Instead of a review, he got the story of his career. His footage hit social media that same evening. 3 minutes and 42 seconds of Craig Dunmore's lobby performance, from the first sneer to the moment Vanessa Cole laid those documents on the counter. Roland posted it with a single caption: "Watch what happens when a hotel manager calls the cops on the woman who owns the hotel." By midnight, the video had 2 million views. By morning, 12 million. The hashtag #SheToldYouSo was trending #1 nationally. News networks picked it up before breakfast: CNN, MSNBC, local affiliates across Virginia. Craig Dunmore's face was everywhere. Not as a hotel manager, as a case study. Rowland followed up with a long-form investigative piece, drawing on the internal investigation findings, Terrence's testimony, and interviews with former employees. The headline read, "Behind the Chandeliers, 8 Years of Racial Discrimination at the Belmont Grand." It was shared over 100,000 times in the first week. The public response was overwhelming. Former guests came forward with their own stories. People who had been turned away, humiliated, or quietly mistreated and had never reported it because they assumed nothing would change. Their stories filled comment sections, news segments, and eventually legal depositions. The legal consequences came fast. The Richmond District Attorney's Office opened a formal investigation. Craig Dunmore was charged with filing a false police report, a Class 1 misdemeanor in Virginia, and faced additional civil rights violation charges in coordination with the State Attorney General's office. Heather Nolan was terminated after the investigation confirmed her direct participation in discriminatory practices. She was named as a co-defendant in a civil suit filed by former employees. Officer Ray Garrett was placed on administrative leave, pending an internal affairs review. His body camera footage, which he had conveniently failed to mention during the lobby confrontation, corroborated every second of Brenda's audio recording. It showed a calm, cooperating woman and an officer who had escalated without cause. Garrett was suspended for 6 months without pay, ordered to complete mandatory de-escalation and bias training, and reassigned to desk duty upon return. Craig's trial became a landmark in Richmond. The courtroom was packed every day. Local activists held peaceful demonstrations outside the courthouse. The national media covered the proceedings. The evidence was devastating. Brenda's audio recording, Garrett's body camera footage, cell phone videos from multiple lobby guests, Terrence's 43 incident list, testimony from 12 former employees, internal documents showing the red dot flagging system, Craig's own handwritten scripts for handling minority guest complaints. His defense attorney argued that Craig was overzealous but not malicious. The jury didn't buy it. Craig Dunmore was found guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to a heavy fine, 2 years of probation, 300 hours of community service with a civil rights organization, and, most significantly, a permanent ban from employment in the hospitality industry in the Commonwealth of Virginia. When the verdict was read, Craig sat motionless in the defendant's chair. No smirk, no authority, no name tag. Just a man in a wrinkled suit staring at the table in front of him, finally understanding what it feels like when the system you trusted turns its back on you. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Vanessa Cole. She gave a single statement. This case was never just about one hotel or one manager. It was about a culture that allows people like Craig Dunmore to thrive unchecked for years, because the people they hurt are the people society has decided not to listen to. Today, the court listened. Brenda wasn't at the courthouse. She was at the Belmont Grand, meeting with her new management team, reviewing the reforms she had already begun implementing. She didn't need to watch Craig fall. She had work to do. 6 months later, the Belmont Grand was unrecognizable. Not the building. The marble still gleamed, the chandeliers still sparkled, the piano still played softly in the lounge. The bones of the hotel were the same, but its soul had changed completely. Brenda dismantled everything Craig Dunmore had built and rebuilt it from the ground up. She implemented mandatory bias training for every employee, from management to housekeeping. Not a 1-hour seminar with a PowerPoint, a comprehensive, ongoing program led by civil rights educators, with quarterly evaluations and real consequences for violations. The red dot flagging system was eliminated on day 1. In its place, Brenda introduced a guest experience protocol that treated every person who walked through those doors with identical dignity, regardless of what they wore, what they drove, or what they looked like. The scripted apologies Craig had written were shredded, replaced with a simple policy. If a guest has a problem, you fix it. No deflection, No excuses. She created a transparent complaint system. Guests could submit feedback directly to an independent review board, bypassing management entirely. Every complaint was logged, tracked, and addressed within 48 hours. No more buried reports. No more convenient amnesia. And then there was Terrence Adams, the quiet bellhop who had pressed himself against walls, who had whispered, "Not again," who had carried 43 incidents in his phone, like a secret he couldn't put down, was promoted to front desk supervisor. His first week in the new role, he greeted every single guest the same way. Eye contact, warm smile, a genuine, "Welcome to the Belmont Grand." Every person, every time. No exceptions. Brenda also established the Williams Hospitality Fellowship, a scholarship fund for young people of color pursuing careers in hotel management. The first class of recipients included 12 students from across Virginia. Terrence was among them, enrolled in an evening hospitality management program at Virginia Commonwealth University. The hotel's online reviews transformed. Where there had once been scattered complaints about unwelcoming staff and uncomfortable atmosphere, there were now 5-star ratings praising the warmth and professionalism of the new Belmont Grand. Revenue didn't drop after the scandal. It increased. Occupancy rates climbed 15% in the first quarter after the reforms. Treating all people with respect wasn't just the right thing to do, it was good business. Brenda was profiled in Forbes and Black Enterprise for what journalists called equity-driven hospitality leadership. She gave keynote speeches, she did interviews, but she never stopped doing her anonymous inspections. Every new property she acquired, she showed up, alone, dressed down, no entourage, and watched. Because the truth about any place reveals itself in how it treats the person it thinks doesn't matter. As for Craig Dunmore, he was last spotted leaving the Richmond courthouse after his final probation check-in. A reporter from the Dispatch caught him on the steps and asked for a comment. Craig pulled his jacket over his face and walked to his car without a word. No smirk, no authority, no name tag. Just a man who had finally learned that the power he thought he owned had never really been his. Heather Nolan left Virginia. No forwarding address, no LinkedIn update. She simply disappeared, the way people do when they realize their name has become a cautionary tale. Officer Garrett completed his mandatory training and returned to desk duty. He requested a transfer to a different precinct. Whether he changed or simply relocated his habits, only time would tell. And Brenda? She kept building, kept acquiring, kept reforming, kept walking into lobbies where nobody knew her name and making sure that didn't matter. So here's what I want to ask you. Have you ever been in a room where someone was being disrespected, not for anything they did, but for who they are? And if you have, what did you do? Or what do you wish you had done? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if this one hit you the way it hit me, if it made you angry, made you think, made you feel something, then do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because these stories need to be told. And I'm just getting started.
8 years, Craig Dunmore ran the hotel like his personal kingdom for 8 years. And it took one woman in a praise sweater and flat shoes to bring the whole thing down. But you know what stayed with me? It's not Vanessa dropping those documents on the counter. That was such fine. Don't get me wrong, it's Terrence. 43 incidents saved in his phone, and 43 times he watched it happen and kept showing up the next day. Because he didn't think anyone would listen. Brenda didn't work in there to be a hero. She worked in to see the truth. And she made sure people like Terrence finally had some way safe to tell it. And the real talk, we've all been in the lobby. Maybe not that exact one, but a room where someone got treated like they were less than, and with us stood there. So let me ask you, if it was Terence, would you have spoken up, or would you have stayed quiet too? Drop the answer in the comments. I read everyone. If this hit you, smash like and say it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, how we treat someone who can do nothing for you says everything about who you are.